ZQ Lore woke earlier than usual, all three hearts thumping in an awkward, anxious rhythm. Today was the day. Ever since I had joined the Veteran Diplomatic Corps as a junior analyst, everyone in my division had whispered about the assignment that involved the humans. Of course, humans were the cooperative's newest members, but that wasn't the intriguing part. What drew the most fascination and fear were the stories of how humans reacted when provoked. My superiors had given me a specific research mandate: investigate why every species in the Galactic Cooperative seemed to back away the moment humans said the words, "Now, I'm actually getting annoyed." I had read old reports, rumors, even a few contradictory first-hand accounts, but they never felt entirely real. Could an entire room of ambassadors really scatter just because one human spoke calmly of their annoyance? It sounded exaggerated, ridiculous even. I hope so, but I suspected otherwise. I stepped out of my dormitory pod, flicking my two main eyes across my datapad to review the day's itinerary. The name leaped off the screen. Earth delegation just arrived at docking bay 39. My hearts began their fluttering again, and I took a moment to steady my breathing through my secondary respiratory orifice. Calm yourself, Lore, I told myself. After all, how bad could they be? Everyone said humans were friendly, quick to laugh, quick to greet with bizarre physical gestures like handshakes. They could be boisterous, yes, but terrifying? Perhaps only under extreme conditions. I made my way through the corridors of Veteran Embassy Station, trying not to dwell on the hushed conversations I had overheard the previous evening. Senior envoys retelling some fateful incident with an ambassador named Leonard Thompson, who had calmly threatened to use a marble paperweight against a Poolan diplomat's biological weakness. That single account had led to urgent memos: never push a human too far. And the fateful phrase that apparently triggered that incident? Now I'm actually getting annoyed. But tall tales often grow in the retelling. I needed fresh eyes on the subject, and the Diplomatic Corps had selected me to do it. I reached the reception hall and found 5 humans waiting. They were of different heights, different skin shades, different postures, but they all exuded the same calm readiness. One, presumably the leader, was a tall woman with short, neatly styled hair, wearing what I recognized as a fitted dark suit. Her face lit up in a smile as soon as she noticed me. It was a wide, open expression that showed teeth. I repressed a twitch. Veteran usually bared teeth only in combat or extreme frustration, but humans were rumored to do so out of pure friendliness. I try not to overinterpret it. "Greetings," I said, using my translator pendant. I also extended my upper left arm, the standard gesture of welcome in Veteran culture. "I am ZQ Lore, junior analyst for the Veteran Diplomatic Corps. I will be accompanying you on your negotiation tour across cooperative space." The tall woman's handshake was warm but firm. Her fingers wrapped around my forearm, a slight adaptation so that we could align grips more comfortably. "Jasmine Carver," she said, "trade representative for Earth. These are my colleagues: Ramon Douglas, our legal liaison; Isabel Harrington, our economics advisor, DR; Sunil Chow, science and tech specialist; and Lisa Tan, logistics coordinator. We appreciate the warm reception." There was no hint of hostility, no caution, just a casual confidence. It was enough to make me second-guess the horror stories. Maybe my species was simply overreacting. Maybe the cooperative at large had misunderstood the humans. In that moment, I felt the first glimmer of optimism that my report would debunk the myths. The humans followed me through a corridor that led to the main administrative offices, where we would process their arrival and set the schedule for their trade negotiations. Along the way, I explained the station's artificial gravity adjustments, the recommended dietary guidelines for visiting species, and so forth. They listened politely, nodding. Occasionally, they would murmur something about how fascinating it was to see how many species coexisted here. Veterans were tall and had 4 arms, yes, but on this station, we were hardly the strangest silhouettes. I was mildly amused at how unperturbed the humans seemed by our multi-armed forms or by the bioluminescent spots on our temple ridges. A few centuries prior, some species had found us terrifying. Not the humans. Their curiosity overshadowed any potential fear. We entered an office lined with translational tablets. I directed them to sign the cooperative's official visitor ledger. As they filled out the forms, Jasmine Carver asked, "So, Officer Lore, can I call you Lore? How long have you been with the Diplomatic Corps?" "Please, just Lore is fine," I said. "I've been with the Corps for 3 standard cycles. This is my first time working directly with a delegation from Earth." An understatement. It was my first time working with humans at all. "We're glad to have you on board," she replied kindly. "I know our species is still relatively new on the scene, so any insight is appreciated." I hesitated, uncertain whether to mention my true purpose. My assignment was partly an anthropological project to investigate the phenomenon behind humans' capacity for intense, controlled anger. I decided not to share those details yet. No need to alarm them. "I hope to learn as much from you as you learn from us," I said diplomatically. When we concluded our registration, I guided them to the station's guest quarters so they could settle in before meeting local officials from Alvari, the first species on their negotiation list. On the way, Dr. Chow peppered me with questions about atmospheric composition and whether certain microbes might pose any immunological risk. Isabel Harrington, the economist, asked about typical trade tariffs for new arrivals in this sector. They were, by all appearances, thorough and inquisitive. Nothing about them radiated the tense aura I had read about in the old files. I cataloged the difference in my mind, making mental notes for my eventual report. After a short rest period, we proceeded to the Alvari consulate. The Alvari were physically smaller than humans, with elongated skulls and soft pastel skin that exuded subtle patterns of phosphorescence. They prided themselves on a ritual of formal courtesy. Every meeting began with a ceremonial waiting period of 2 local hours, in which all parties sat in meditative silence, inhaling mild incense derived from native Alvari flora. Many species found it stifling, but the humans accepted it politely. If they found it odd or boring, they gave no external indication beyond an occasional adjusting of posture. I studied them closely. If they were truly as impatient as rumored, maybe they'd slip up, but they did not. When the waiting period ended, the Alvari lead official, Counselor Viros, finally spoke. "We greet Earth with open hearts. We have studied your species from afar, gleaning that you are new in the cosmic sphere, yet adventurous in spirit. We do hope you respect our traditions of commerce, which rely on a slow but thorough negotiation process." Jasmine Carver bowed her head. "We come in friendship and mutual interest. Earth respects all traditions, including the measured pace you hold dear. We look forward to building a mutually beneficial relationship." Her tone was so serene that I wanted to laugh at my earlier fears. This was going smoothly. The rest of the meeting revolved around polite exchanges, with the humans presenting small tokens from Earth, handcrafted pieces of art, exotic spices, digital music samples. Counselor Viros and the other Alvari delegates seemed charmed. I spent much of that meeting in quiet relief, convinced that the rumors about humans losing control were exaggerated. But then one of the Alvari sub-counselors, a rather young official named Thiel, made an offhand remark. "Of course, we appreciate your gifts. You humans must realize your technology is behind that of most cooperative members. Perhaps in a few centuries, you will catch up. Until then, we will ensure you do not overextend yourselves." The sub-counselor's tone was condescending. I felt my primary arms tense. Among my people, it was standard courtesy to avoid open disparagement of a visiting delegation's capabilities. But Jasmine just responded with a mild laugh. "We understand your concern. Earth is still learning. That's part of why we're here." It did not escalate. The humans accepted the slight with a polite smile. The Alvari concluded the session with standard pleasantries. Before leaving, Counselor Viros offered, "We will contact you for the next round of discussions in a few days. Please be patient. Thoroughness is essential to us." The humans nodded agreeably. When the Alvari left, I relaxed. If that was the sort of provocation that some species worried about, the humans had handled it like seasoned diplomats. No raised voices, no threats. If anything, they seemed more tolerant than many species I knew. Perhaps the entire fiasco with the so-called annoyance phrase had been overblown. I walked with them back to their quarters, reflecting on how easily they shrugged off the remarks from Thiel. They were eager to continue their itinerary, to meet new potential partners, and they even teased one another about how long the ceremonial silence had lasted. Dr. Chow quipped that he nearly dozed off. Everyone laughed. I typed a quick note into my datapad that evening. Humans, more patient than expected. Show no sign of anger at minor slights. I sent a preliminary analysis to my superior, Grand Administrator Telex, who responded with a cautious message reminding me that sometimes the real test arises in deeper confrontations. Keep observing, Telex wrote. We must understand the full range of their emotional thresholds. I intended to do just that, but a growing part of me suspected there wouldn't be any dramatic meltdown at all. The next morning, we departed for MEV, a world known for its formidable trade economy and staunch insistence on hierarchical protocols that often disadvantaged new species. The humans seemed in high spirits during the journey, discussing economic models and potential synergy with MEV's resource markets. I sat among them, half listening, half daydreaming about how my final report might debunk all those fearful rumors. We arrived at MEV's orbital platform. The architecture was stark, metallic, and imposing, with sharp angles reminiscent of the MEV psyche. Efficient, cold, unyielding. Their lead trade official was Minister Galler, a tall figure with a bony crest along the back of his skull. Immediately, he exuded an air of disdain, as though we were intruding. He made no attempt at pleasantries, skipping right to business. The MEV Empire, Galler announced, has strict guidelines for trade. New species, especially those as young as humans, are subject to higher tariffs and more limited access. Surely you understand the gap between your capabilities and ours. For you to join our networks, you must pay the standard entry-level tax of 15% above market. Jasmine maintained an even tone. We appreciate that MEV has established procedures. However, we were hoping for a more flexible approach, considering Earth's unique offerings. Our scientists have identified resources, rare minerals, specialized biotech, that could be highly beneficial to MEV industries. Galler's jaw set in a firm line. We require tangible proof of your goods' value. Until then, you remain untested and thus subject to the standard levy. This was typical MEV procedure. Apply maximum pressure, see if the other side buckled. I had witnessed it before, and many species caved under these demands, forced to accept unfavorable rates. But the humans did not look out. Isabel Harrington asked calm, pointed questions about the tariff's legality under the broader cooperative charter. Ramon Douglas, the legal liaison, quoted various sections of interstellar regulations. They deftly build a case that the MEV approach might actually violate certain anti-discriminatory clauses. Galler grew visibly irritated, though he tried to hide it. Despite his annoyance, the humans stayed polite. Eventually, Galler ended the meeting, stating that he needed to review the documents. He left us in a stark waiting lounge for nearly 2 hours. The humans used the time to bounce ideas off each other, reviewing strategies for upcoming negotiations. No one complained. They even joked about how the MEV's sense of interior decoration was as warm as a cryogenic vault. I watched them, quietly impressed. Most delegates found the MEV's frigid condescension insufferable. Yet the humans treated it almost like a game. However, at the 2-hour mark, an undersecretary arrived and ushered us back into Galler's office. I could see by the set of his bony crest that he was vexed. He sat down and steepled his fingers. We have decided to place Earth on a provisional status. That means the tariff remains, but if you can prove your worth in the next 6 months, we might revise it. Though, given your planet's limited background, 6 months might be too optimistic for you to gather evidence. This time, I saw the slightest flicker in Jasmine Carver's expression, a tightening around the eyes, a momentary tensing of her jaw. She didn't speak for a second, and I sensed a tension in the air. But then she exhaled and replied with a measured tone. We'll accept the challenge. Our scientists can provide preliminary data about the resources we intend to export, and we'll see if those results align with the standards you demand. She rose from her seat in what looked like a polite signal that the meeting was concluded. Galler remained seated, offering no courtesy. Very well. We will reconvene if you manage to gather sufficient data. Or if you choose to return to your small world with your tail between your legs. Whichever comes first. I inhaled sharply. That was a clear insult in any culture, implying cowardice. My 3 hearts pounded, waiting for the humans to react. But once again, Jasmine simply nodded. We'll see you soon, she said coolly. The delegation walked out. No dramatic confrontation. No meltdown. As we rode the shuttle back to the guest quarters, the humans chatted about practical next steps to gather the data. If anything, they sounded energized by the challenge. Meanwhile, I was left reeling. Galler's words were the kind that started feuds, but they had deflected it with surprising ease. That evening, I logged a second note. Humans remain calm in face of overt insults. They appeared to treat negotiation like a puzzle to solve rather than a fight to win. I still wondered if they had a breaking point, or if the entire rumor about their lethal annoyance was pure myth. We traveled next to the small but strategically placed system of Alvari, where negotiations were scheduled to continue in a multi-species summit. The corridor leading to the summit chamber was lined with envoys from various worlds. I glimpsed a few Poolans, their moisture membranes rippling with typical anxiety. My stomach clenched a bit when I saw them, recalling the stories from the Ambassador Thompson fiasco. But maybe these Poolans were different from Grok. Maybe they had learned a measure of caution after that incident. Inside the large domed hall, representatives milled about, exchanging pleasantries. Jasmine Carver and her team quickly found the Alvari group to finalize the next stage of their trade discussion. I lingered near them, watching. A few minutes later, a Poolan official drifted close, eavesdropping. The Poolan's translucent membrane undulated in a faint pinkish hue. I recognized that color from my cultural notes. Curiosity blended with mild scorn. His voice gurgled softly. Humans, you are quite bold to approach so many established worlds in such a short span. Do you not fear overextending your limited resources? Dr. Chow flashed a cordial smile. We appreciate the concern, but our resources are sufficient for the negotiations we've scheduled. The Poolan official's membrane darkened slightly. So confident for a species that still engages in segmented national divisions on its home planet. Do you not tire of fracturing yourselves? Or is it your way of staying entertained? I swallowed uneasily. This was a clear provocation. Many starfaring species had unified planetary governments. Earth was known to have multiple nations cooperating under a planetary alliance, but not a single monolithic system. Jasmine's gaze flicked up from the datapad in her hands. She responded calmly. We found diversity can be beneficial. Different approaches, different cultures, all collaborating. It keeps us adaptable. The Poolan official's membrane began to pulse faster, perhaps enjoying the standoff. Or it keeps you backwards and divided. But I suppose your kind tries to make the best of your limitations. An odd hush spread over the immediate area. Several other delegates had paused to watch. This was not friendly banter. My hearts hammered as I remembered every line from the old training manual describing the early fiasco with Ambassador Thompson. The humans never escalated unless they heard something truly galling. But was this galling enough? Jasmine exhaled, fixed a polite yet tight-lipped smile on her face, and said, I appreciate your insights, Ambassador. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have to confirm a scheduling detail. She turned away. The rest of the delegation followed. And just like that, the tension dissipated. The Poolan official remained there, pink membrane fluttering, seemingly disappointed that he hadn't triggered a bigger reaction. I felt an odd mixture of relief and confusion. Again, the humans had simply sidestepped. Were these the same creatures rumored to cause entire rooms to panic at the smallest sign of their anger? Later that afternoon, the multi-species meeting commenced. Each delegation took a turn presenting overviews of their trade objectives. The humans delivered a succinct but compelling presentation about Earth's potential resources, their new technologies, and the cultural goods they believed would enrich the cooperative's diverse markets. Most delegates listened attentively, though some took the opportunity to murmur about Earth's inexperience. The humans fielded questions patiently, never once showing genuine frustration. Then Minister Galler of MEV appeared on-screen via HoloLink. He had presumably returned to MEV territory but still participated in the summit. He offered comments that Earth's proposals lacked substance, that their data was inconclusive, and that no serious partner would trust such novices. Even as he piled on these remarks, the humans continued to respond politely. Ramon Douglas cited further references, Isabel offered clarifications on the data, and Jasmine maintained a composed expression. I couldn't help studying her face closely, a slight tightness around her eyes, a subtle tautness in her shoulders. Could that be the early sign of anger? Or was it mere fatigue? Finally, Galler sneered. Of course, we all know humans are given to emotional outbursts, so perhaps your placidity is just a mask. Still, I suppose we must humor your illusions of competence for now. A hush rippled through the assembly. My heart's nearly jammed. This was a direct insult in front of multiple delegations. I instinctively took a step closer to Jasmine, worried that this might be the moment. Perhaps now we would see the dreaded phrase. She inhaled, her eyes locked onto Galler's holographic form. Then she said, "We respect your experience, Minister. Thank you for your perspective." And that was it. She gave no outward sign of deeper hostility. Galler's crest twitched in annoyance, perhaps disappointed that his barb had failed to provoke a meltdown. The meeting proceeded. I was left feeling more perplexed than ever. Were the terrifying humans I'd heard so much about. Later that night, I wrote another update in my personal log. Human patience seems nearly endless, even in the face of overt provocation. Possibly the rumors are severely exaggerated. However, I remain alert for signs that might confirm or deny the phenomenon known as the annoyance threshold. I still wondered if I'd ever see that threshold crossed. Part of me hoped not. Another part of me, the analyst part, wanted definitive data. We traveled again, this time to a more remote sector of cooperative space, where a final series of negotiations was arranged to open direct shipping routes for Earth's goods. The station we arrived at was a sprawling trade hub, crawling with delegations from dozens of worlds. Our schedule was packed with back-to-back meetings. The humans seemed unfazed, chugging stimulants, coffee, they called it, and working late into the night to refine proposals. I marveled at their stamina, especially since they also needed hours of sleep each day, which many older species like to ridicule. On the second morning at the trade hub, things began to unravel. We had an early session with a Malfer, a species known for labyrinthine bureaucracy. They insisted on triple-checking every line in the humans' proposals. Hours dragged on, with endless questions and repeated demands for rewriting certain clauses. The humans answered them all, though I detected a strain in their voices. By midday, the Malfer lead negotiator concluded that new species must pay a processing fee for each contract page, an astonishing sum. Isabel Harrington calmly pointed out that no such fee existed in cooperative law, but the Malfer insisted, saying Earth should respect the Malfer system. The standoff lasted another 3 hours. Yet somehow, the humans kept their composure, eventually persuading the Malfer to reduce the supposed fee to a negligible rate. Emerging from that fiasco, the humans grabbed a quick meal, then hurried to the next meeting, which was a tri-party discussion involving the Poolins and the MEV. My heart sank when I saw Minister Galler and that same Poolin official from before, both present. The Poolins looked uneasy, their membranes shimmering in mottled patterns. Galler, by contrast, appeared smug. Jasmine and her team filed in, setting their data pads on the long negotiation table. I stood off to one side, prepared to observe. The tension in the air felt heavier than usual. The Poolin official began with a mild statement about hoping for amicable resolution, but Galler cut in immediately. I suspect this is a waste of time. The humans have not proven they can handle advanced commerce. Earth's resources might be novel, but you clearly lack the stamina for the complexities of interstellar trade. While we of MEV have soared across the galaxy for centuries, You were presumably still fighting primitive wars among yourselves. Maybe you still do, for all we know. He let that hang, and I swore I saw DR. Chow's hand tense around his stylus. Isabel's lips formed a thin line. Jasmine placed her palms flat on the table, a gesture I had come to recognize as her attempt to remain centered. She spoke quietly. We're aware that Earth's history is not without conflict. However, that's not relevant to the current negotiations. Let's keep this focused on trade agreements, shall we? Galler made a scoffing sound. Not relevant? Why? It speaks directly to your reliability. If you cannot keep peace among your own kind, how can you honor interstellar agreements? Perhaps you'll revert to warring tribes the moment you encounter adversity. My hands clenched. Surely this was beyond typical negotiation aggression. I thought this must be it. They won't tolerate more. I stared at Jasmine Carver, half expecting her to leap across the table or brandish some cunning threat. She did none of that. Instead, she inhaled, let the breath out slowly, and said, Minister, Earth is united in this endeavor. Our track record in the cooperative so far speaks for itself. Your personal doubts about our civilization's past do not alter the present facts. Then the Pulin official piped in, stoking the fire. Interestingly, it is rumored that humans become extremely volatile when insulted. I have heard tales of entire assemblies fleeing once a human states they are angry. Is it your approach now? Intimidate us until we submit. A ripple of quiet laughter passed among some other minor delegates in the room, apparently amused by the notion. I shifted uncomfortably. This was the first time someone had called them out in such a direct way. Jasmine's team exchanged glances. Ramon Douglas cleared his throat. We do not resort to intimidation. We prefer rational discourse. That rumor might stem from misunderstandings or isolated incidents. Is that so? Galler said, leaning forward. Because from what we have gathered, your entire species is famous for veiling your aggression behind a veneer of civility until you finally reveal your true nature. Perhaps you would like to demonstrate, since you seem so eager to claim we are mistaken about you. He was baiting them. I could see the grip of DR. Chow's stylus tightened again. Lisa Tin shifted in her chair. Isabel Harrington's left hand curled around the edge of the table. All subtle signals. My heart's hammered. I half wondered if I should intervene, but I lacked the authority to command Galler to stop. The Pulins watched eagerly, as though hoping to see a spectacle. Jasmine's voice, when it came, was measured. Minister Galler, I'm not sure what you hope to accomplish with these provocations. If you want to keep discussing trade, we're open to reason. If not, we should end this meeting now and reconvene under more professional circumstances. Galler laughed, a harsh sound. Afraid to show the savage side of your species? You can't hide behind polite smiles forever, human. We know the truth. You are a brood of squabbling apes, only recently tamed by technology you barely understand. You still require hours of unconsciousness each day, do you not? A truly primitive vulnerability. I felt the temperature in the room drop. The humans all seemed to go very still, as if they were no longer breathing. I stepped closer, unsure what I would even do. Then Jasmine Carver slowly stood up from her seat, placing both hands on the table once more. She looked at Galler, and the tone of her voice changed in a way I had never heard before, soft, controlled, but laced with an unmistakable edge. Minister, she said quietly, I'm going to tell you something I rarely say in a professional setting. She paused, her gaze sweeping the table, capturing Galler, the Pulin official, every minor delegate. Then she uttered the words, now I'm actually getting annoyed. A strange hush fell over the room, like the air had been sucked away. The Pulin's membranes flashed pale, a sign of sudden alarm. Several of the minor delegates shifted back in their chairs, as if physically distancing themselves. My heart's pounded so loud, I thought the entire hall might hear. The humans didn't raise their voices or brandish weapons. They simply stared, every one of them wearing expressions that were no longer conciliatory. It was not an unhinged rage, far from it. It looked more like lethal calm. Galler tried to speak, but his voice cracked slightly. So what if you are annoyed? Do you believe that changes anything? Ramon Douglas answered, his tone just as unnervingly composed. It changes everything, Minister. We have been more than patient with your baseless derision, your unsubtle attempts to undermine our credibility, your open insults. But that ends now. We have collected extensive documentation of your empire's questionable tactics, including evidence that some of your so-called procedures violate multiple cooperative codes. Lisa Tan nodded, tapping her tablet. If you want to escalate by insulting Earth on a personal level, we can play that game. We have data, direct from your own publicly accessible records, showing that you have overcharged emerging worlds by an average of 20% beyond the stated tariff. That is potentially illegal under interstellar trade law. Galler's bony crest flared in alarm. He opened his mouth, but Jasmine continued. We prefer collaboration to conflict, Minister. But if you insist on pressing us in this manner, we won't simply sit by. We'll take this to the highest levels of the cooperative. We will present every scrap of evidence we have uncovered about MEV's exploitative policies. And, given the testimonies we've gathered from smaller species you've strong-armed, we suspect the entire Cooperative Council will be very interested to intervene. Now wait, Galler began, but he was visibly rattled, his bravado cracking. He turned a glance toward the Poulin official, who was also looking uneasy. The once eager gaze of the Poulin had turned cautious, as though second-guessing the wisdom of provoking the humans. Jasmine's voice didn't rise in volume, but it carried a weight that pressed down on the entire chamber. This is not a threat born of emotion, Minister Galler. It's a measured decision. We have no intention of continuing pointless arguments. If you want to step back to rational discourse, we'll remain open to fair trade. If not, we'll escalate officially. Either way, we will not stand here and be ridiculed further. Galler stared, uncertain. For a few seconds, the room remained deathly still. Then the Poulin official, apparently sensing disaster, spoke hurriedly. Perhaps we should refocus on the practical details. There's no need for unpleasantness. Lisa Tan arched an eyebrow. We try to keep it pleasant. You seem determined to push our boundaries. Galler cleared his throat, adjusting the data slides on his console with a jerky motion. Fine, he said, his voice subdued. Let's proceed with the matter at hand. No need to drag in extraneous allegations. I'm sure we can find an arrangement that satisfies everyone. We need not involve the council. Just like that, the atmosphere shifted. People exhaled, tension partially easing. But the humans' expressions stayed coldly attentive. They had flipped a switch from friendly negotiating partners to unyielding defenders of their integrity. They remained polite, but their politeness no longer felt accommodating. It felt like a locked door that Galler and the Poulin official could only open by cooperating. The rest of that meeting passed in a subdued flurry of compromise. Galler reeled back many of his demands. The Poulin official tried to appear conciliatory, and the humans meticulously extracted multiple concessions. By the end, they had hammered out a workable framework that was far more favorable to Earth than the original draft had been. When it was done, Jasmine simply said, "We'll finalize the details with you soon," and gathered her datapad. She gave Galler and the Poulin official one last, cool nod before turning to leave. I followed in stunned silence, still rattled by the spectacle. Outside the chamber, the humans paused in a corridor. Isabel Harrington let out a long breath. Well, that was more intense than usual. Lisa Tin made a wry face. I hate resorting to that mode, but Galler was crossing every line. Dr. Chow rolled his shoulders, as though shaking off residual tension. I don't enjoy it either, but it was necessary. I couldn't hold back my curiosity any longer. So, that phrase you said. Now I'm actually getting annoyed. That's the moment the entire atmosphere changed. Why do so many species react with fear to those words? You didn't shout. You didn't threaten direct harm. You just quietly stated your annoyance, and the room froze. They all looked at me with sympathetic smiles. Jasmine answered softly. The words themselves aren't magical. It's the line we draw when we've decided enough is enough, that we're done pretending everything's okay. We spend so much effort adapting to others, deflecting minor insults, staying polite. But once we say we're annoyed, that means we've made a decision to stop accommodating and to push back with everything we've got. Ramon Douglas nodded. And in most negotiations, that can be terrifying for the other party, because humans have a reputation, earned or not, for being ruthless if pushed to the brink. We don't start conflicts lightly, but once we commit, we are relentless. Isabel shrugged. It might be an evolution thing. We come from a harsh planet. We can endure a lot of pressure, but when we finally switch into response mode, it's no bluff. We've studied the cooperative enough to know the ins and outs of the rules. We know how to turn the system on the aggressor. So the phrase basically means, we will now engage you on our terms. Lisa Tan snorted. We call it the line in the sand. Once it's crossed, niceties become purely optional. I scribbled everything down on my data pad, my mind whirling. So that was it. The moment they said, now I'm actually getting annoyed, they declare their break from endless patience. Every other species, wise or not, recognized that shift. The stories were not mere exaggerations then, though they might have been dramatized over time. The humans indeed had a threshold that, once reached, unleashed a calm but formidable posture of confrontation. I felt both awe and a small stab of fear, because while I had grown to appreciate their adaptability, I now realized how dangerously effective they could be if they chose to stop bending. Over the next few days, the changes reverberated throughout the trade hub. Word spread of the standoff in that tri-party meeting. The Poolans suddenly offered a friendly reevaluation of Earth's proposals. Galler made a statement back on MEV, praising Earth's unique potential. Delegations that had previously stalled or ridiculed Earth now scrambled to finalize agreements. It was as if a single moment of firm human resolve had rippled across the entire sector, reminding everyone that while humans might be polite, they were not to be trifled with. I carefully documented each new reaction. My final report would be conclusive. The phenomenon was real, deeply woven into the human psyche. And it wasn't about losing control. It was about deciding to enforce their will. The difference was profound. The line between jokes and threats lay not in raw aggression, but in that calm, direct announcement. Now I'm actually getting annoyed. On our final day at the Trade Hub, we held a small reception to celebrate the successful conclusion of multiple negotiations. The tension had seemingly dissipated. Both the MEV and the Poolans were contrite. Various other species approached the humans with newfound respect. Even Galler sent a message apologizing for any miscommunication and claiming he looked forward to working with Earth. It was almost surreal. Some might call it opportunistic or hypocritical. But in the realm of interstellar diplomacy, such reversals were common once a species demonstrated its clout. I found myself standing with Jasmine Carver near a large viewport, gazing at the swirling lights of the trade station traffic. The ambience was calm, the music subdued. Humans were sipping beverages they called champagne. I took a mild stimulant beverage appropriate for vectorants. The atmosphere felt like triumph, but also a sense of closure. I turned to Jasmine, my curiosity still buzzing. You've accomplished everything you came here for, and more. There's already talk that Earth will be recognized as a major commercial partner. She nodded, her expression thoughtful. We did what we had to do, and we couldn't have done it without your guidance, Lore. You helped us understand the nuances of each species. That was invaluable. I blinked my top pair of eyelids in a Vecturan gesture of modest acknowledgement. I'm just an observer. You and your team did the heavy lifting. Still, I appreciate the trust you placed in me. Jasmine smiled, that friendly human smile that now carried a deeper resonance. You've witnessed the entire spectrum, I think. From our patience to the moment we draw the line. I took a careful sip of my drink, scanning the crowd. After all this, I still wonder, are you always so tolerant of disrespect until you reach that line? Or are some humans less patient? She allowed a soft chuckle. Humans are diverse. Some of us have shorter fuses, if you will. But in professional settings, especially in the diplomatic corps, we're trained to maintain composure longer than average. Still, no matter how long or short that fuse is, once it's spent, the result is the same. We shift into that final mode of controlled action. I glanced around. Delegates from half a dozen worlds were watching us from a polite distance, as if we were exotic animals at a zoo. It was apparent that the humans' reputation had soared, along with a certain caution from others. I see, I said softly. So that's the real reason everyone runs when they hear that phrase. They know it means the time for playing is over. She nodded. Precisely. Later that night, as I finished typing up my official report, I reflected on all the times in the past weeks that I'd seen them endure taunts, insults, blatant condescension, only to remain cordial. The difference between losing your temper and deciding to end your forbearance was enormous. And that was the distinction that made humans so unpredictable. When most species reached their anger threshold, they became erratic. They might lash out physically or storm away, or in the case of species with specific biological signals, they might puff up or change color. Humans did the opposite. They became eerily calm, focusing all their energies on strategic retaliation, verbal, legal, diplomatic. That was the true power behind "Now I'm actually getting annoyed." I concluded my report with these lines. The human capacity for extended patience fosters a deceptive sense of docility. Other species may assume humans lack the pride or passion to defend themselves vigorously. Yet once provoked beyond a critical threshold, humans deploy formidable strategic aggression under the banner of calm rationality. Their entire demeanor shifts from accommodating to unyielding. It is not reckless fury. It is a cold, calculated stance that quickly redefines the terms of any engagement. The phrase, "Now I'm actually getting annoyed," serves as their verbal trigger. The galaxy at large has learned, through several high-profile incidents, that these words signify a final posture from which humans do not retreat. And so, even if they speak quietly, even if they continue to smile, it is a smile that warns of what comes next, a decisive move that can topple the unprepared. Hence, the universal reaction: create distance, concede ground, or face a human who has decided to end the conversation on their own terms. 2 days later, I accompanied the humans to their shuttle as they prepared to depart the station and return to Earth. Each one gave me a farewell handshake. Jasmine lingered for a moment, turning to me with a small grin. "I hope our paths cross again soon, Laura. We're grateful for your assistance." I dipped my head in the Vecturian gesture of respect. "You've taught me more than I ever expected. Good luck on your future endeavors. And I'll remember your warning about that phrase." Her eyes sparkled with subdued amusement. To be fair, it's not always a warning. Sometimes it's just a courtesy, telling you that polite negotiation time is over. But yes, I hope you never end up on the receiving end of it. As their shuttle doors slid shut, I felt a tug of mixed emotions. Fondness for these humans, admiration for their drive, and a hint of lingering wariness at how quickly they could pivot from harmless jokes to lethal calm. I found myself hoping that the galaxy would learn to work with, rather than against them, because my research had clarified one inescapable conclusion: the humans were neither monsters nor meek pushovers. They were complicated, stubborn, adaptable beings who valued cooperation. But when they said, "Now I'm actually getting annoyed," they meant it was time to stop cooperating on anyone else's terms. In that moment, the humans took control with a level of composure most species had never encountered. Grand Administrator Telex thanked me personally for the depth of my report. She admitted that even she had only read secondhand accounts of Ambassador Thompson's dramatic confrontation with the Poolans, but now we had a systematic study from multiple vantage points, verifying the phenomenon. My superiors began drafting new advisories for how to engage with humans diplomatically. Maintain courtesy, but watch for any sign that their patience is exhausted. If you hear them declare annoyance, propose immediate compromise or exit the situation. Still, I couldn't help feeling that such guidelines overlooked the key insight I had gained. The humans don't want to intimidate or conquer. They want to trade, explore, and learn. It's just that once they decide to push back, they do so with merciless clarity. That single sentence, "Now I'm actually getting annoyed," is less an emotional outburst and more a controlled statement of intent. We will no longer adapt to your demands. you will adapt to ours. The next time I spotted a human in the corridors of the station, I felt a surge of friendly recognition. I even approached and tried out their handshake ritual. They were a research scientist, unrelated to Jasmine's group, but they smiled graciously and chatted about Earth's cuisine, about how excited they would share coffee with other species. No tension, no hidden menace. That was the paradox. Humans could be some of the friendliest individuals in the galaxy until they reached that line. And once they reached it, you would rather flee than find out what lay behind those calm, unwavering stares. In the final addendum to my report, I wrote a personal note. In forging alliances with humans, do not fear everyday disagreements. They handle small conflicts with humor and patience. Fear instead the moment you finally break their tolerance, because if they quietly say they're annoyed, you have already lost the chance for an easy resolution. They will systematically and calmly dismantle every advantage you thought you had, leaving you few options beyond capitulation. They do not do this out of cruelty. They do it because they have discovered that patience is a powerful shield, until they decide it is time to wield a sword instead. That statement would become somewhat famous within the cooperative's internal circles, apparently quoted in subsequent training documents for new diplomats. Some found it dramatic, but others recognized its accuracy. The humans themselves, upon reading it, merely chuckled and said they couldn't have phrased it better. I suppose that is the essence of why all species run when humans say, "Now I'm actually getting annoyed." It's not that the humans become uncontrollable or monstrous. It's that they become perfectly in control, harnessing centuries of conflict-honed instincts to negotiate like apex predators. So yes, the rumor is true in its own way. When a human says those words, the best course of action is to step back, offer a real compromise, or else brace for the unstoppable force of their unwavering determination. And that, I learned, is far more frightening than any mindless rage could ever be.